Does influencer marketing require an Instagram account filled with expertly timed photos in extravagant locales?
If I'm trying to influence, I could do that on these social channels with these individuals that are called influencers who have followings, but I could also influence using people who are popular in the community. First of all, you've got to embrace that culture internally and be okay with people inside your company having their own social media presences and leveraging those social media presences.
Good day and welcome to the Talent Tide Podcast. My name is Chris Nichols, and today we have a very special guest. His name is Jason Falls out of Louisville, Kentucky, and he has the best beard in the game. Jason, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Thanks, Chris. There might be a couple people that could compete a little bit, and I've trimmed mine lately. So
you've been trimming it up because you've got some other pictures here online that are pretty spectacular. You look like you belong in a 70s rock band, maybe ZZ Top. I don't know.
I was going for the ZZ Top look, and it got probably about down to here. It was pretty lengthy, but then I started getting grief from my family, and so I trimmed it a little bit. I probably trimmed it a little too much. I'm going to let it grow a little bit more.
Dad, you've got something in your beard, right? Like,
yeah,
I'm sure
yeah.
That
I was definitely hiding some Skittles or something in there throughout the day. So,
The Talent Tide Podcast is sponsored by Endevis. Endevis is a full-service recruiting firm offering a broad range of solutions from professional contracting to retained and contingency search to recruitment outsourcing. Endevis prides itself on its core values of being bold, accountable, help first, passionate, and results-driven to ensure the talent we bring to our partners matches their core values and overall mission. For more information, please visit endevis.com. That is ENDEVIS.com. Well, Jason, as I mentioned, I'm excited to have you on. You have a cool story and a great background, working your way up from the hills of Kentucky and the college athletics background, and then all the way to the stage of HubSpot's Inbound Conference, right? I mean, you've authored several books. You've had some very high-performing websites. I mean, I looked through your bio. I could probably write a 3-page paper on your bio. You've been called everything from you're not an asshole. I've read in your reviews. That's really one of the positive things about you. Like that's
I think some people would disagree with that, but I'll take it.
But your background as a thought leader and expert. You have been called a few bad names by trolls, so it balances out. But you lead digital strategy for Cornett out of Lexington. Mm-hmm. You speak at conferences. You've offered three books, like I've said. You also write for Forbes, Business Week, Entrepreneur, etc. What am I missing? It seems like I've covered a lot, but what am I not? What am I not throwing out there that you do? Oh, podcasting. That's the other thing.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Yeah. I've got a couple of podcasts, actually. I do one for Cornett, the agency where I work, called Digging Deeper, which is a live stream that we take off into a podcast. And then my latest book, Winfluence, which is about influencer marketing, obviously. I've got a companion podcast for it as well. So that takes up a lot of my time. Those two pieces plus doing the strategy work at Cornett is what I end up doing. If I have any spare time that my family doesn't gobble up, I'm usually trying to write narrative nonfiction or work on some other writing projects that are just for me, for fun.
With a glass of bourbon too, right?
A glass or 6, yeah. Sure.
I love Kentucky. I was just there a few weeks ago for an Eric Church concert, so got to hang out in Lexington for a weekend. And enjoy my favorite artist in the bluegrass state. So
nice.
We're talking about influence marketing, and that's the topic of your most recent book, Jason. But I want to kind of set the record straight here. Does influencer marketing require an Instagram account filled with expertly timed photos in extravagant locales?
Not at all. In fact, the whole point of my book is to say to people that we've got to stop thinking about it as influencer marketing with an R on the end of it and think of it as influence marketing, because that's ultimately what we're trying to do. Is we're trying to influence an audience to take action. And when you take away that R, what happens is, instead of focusing on Instagram and YouTube and maybe TikTok, you widen it out and go, oh, if I'm trying to influence, I could do that on these social channels with these individuals that are called influencers who have followings. But I could also influence using people who are popular in the community, who have actual influence, who I would call people of influence, not influencers. If I'm a small business in a town and my footprint is geographically limited, then an Instagrammer with 300,000 followers isn't going to help me, because less than 1% of them are probably even going to be in the geographic footprint I'm trying to reach. So what you've got to do, I've told people the analogy before, if your target audience in your local community as a small business is parents, the president of the local PTA might be your best influencer, and it doesn't matter how many Instagram followers they have. So it's really about the act of influence, the verb. That's what we're trying to accomplish. And when you look at it through that filter, you start to open up the blinders and see, oh, wow, yeah, YouTubers are great and they could be effective here, but so could political lobbyists, so could community activists and community leaders, so could a lot of other things. And so let's think of influence a little bit more strategically.
What I find interesting about this whole topic is the fact that to influence could honestly be the shortened definition of marketing. Am I wrong?
Yeah. No, you're not wrong at all, because marketing really is all about, persuading an audience to, try, buy, or consider your product or service. You could also maybe add, it's there to convince the audience to change their thinking about things, which brings more into the public relations, communications sphere of things. But yeah, marketing is ultimately about influencing people to make decisions based on your product, service, brand, et cetera. And so, and when I apply that thinking of taking away the R from influencer marketing and talking about influence marketing, I'm very much talking about the broader, sort of marketing, persuasion, communications world. The reason that I've contextualized it within the filter and the lens of influencer marketing is because so many mainstream media articles that focus on influencers focus on the negative. They focus on the bad. And so many mainstream people who aren't marketing geeks and talk about marketing in the marketing blogs and circles and networks and conferences like I do or you do, aren't going to see the positive and the benefits of marketing through online influencers or influence offline. They're just going to think influencers, oh yeah, those are the people who, fake their fake lives and do peace sign and duck lips all the time, and they're not really effective, so I'm not going to spend any money on them. I spend 90% of my time working with influencers who have actual influence through online channels, some through offline channels as well. And I know that the vast world of influencers out there is very effective and very persuasive for their audiences. So I'm trying to help people see this a little differently so they give it a fair shot for their businesses.
Well, if you think about the power of influence, I mean, we wouldn't have athletes and celebrities working with brands if they are influencers in and of themselves, right? And the same goes with CEOs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anybody, you go back, when you think of influencer marketing on the surface level, very superficial level, you think of celebrity spokespeople, William Shatner for Priceline, or whoever, Shaquille O'Neal for seemingly everything. But now you really have gotten, especially with the NCAA's new rules adjustments for name, image, likeness, you've got, student athletes. We've got one here in Lexington, Kentucky, Masai Russell, who's a 4-time track and field All-American. Well, it also happened that on the side, apart from track and field, she's kind of a fashion style influencer on TikTok and Instagram. But only now, in this past June, with the NCAA's relaxing of the amateur status for name, image, likeness, only now has she been able to actually monetize the fact that she has influence with a certain audience online. So student athletes now at the college level are even getting into the point of being, hey, if my audience, if your brand wants to connect with my audience, I can be a conduit for that. And it's empowering an entire new generation of entrepreneurs.
So we've kind of talked about the bigger picture of influence marketing and really just marketing in general so far. What who this podcast is directed towards are leaders of organizations and individuals that are tasked with hiring and retaining the best talent. And I don't know if you've heard in the news of late, but it's really hard to do that on October 4th, 2021 in this post-pandemic hiring kind of blitz that's going on right now. And so many of these organizations are now realizing that they don't have any idea what candidate marketing looks like. They don't know what B2C marketing is. We have a lot of B2B companies that are now trying to figure out, hey, we've never had to have a strategy related to recruitment marketing. And these are big brands too, right? Like, we're not just talking about small, medium-sized businesses or manufacturing companies or trying to hire nurses, right? Like, we're talking about large brands that cannot hire people. Just last month, we had a $27 billion global company come to us and say, we need help, right? And I'm sitting here saying, you've got $27 billion. You probably can find some people internally that can help you figure this problem out, right? But hey, they're coming to us as experts, and I'll take it. But can you kind of help contextualize for maybe a CHRO or a CFO, or maybe you're contextualizing for a CHRO to be able to tell a story to the CFO, how important the idea of influence marketing or where B2C marketing comes into play in this bigger picture of recruitment marketing for companies?
Sure. Well, I think there's probably, I'm kind of doing this off the top of my head, but I think there's three main areas that you might want to focus on. The first of which is you want to make your business look attractive to the candidates out there that are looking for businesses that are sort of hip to this new era of personal branding and embracing employees that bring, some of that to the table as opposed to just the skill set to do the job at hand. And there's a couple of ways that you need to think about that. First of all, you've got to embrace that culture internally and be okay with people inside your company having their own social media presences and leveraging those social media presences for your company within their own filter, right? It can't be just you have to dictate, here's every word that you have to say and it has to be perfect or we're going to be mad at you and you're going to get fired. It's got to be, here's what the company wants to communicate to audiences out there. Now you communicate it to your audience the best way that you know how to communicate to your audience. So embracing the fact that you can have personal brands within an institution, an organization, is probably the first key step. The second key step to look attractive to those potential candidates out there looking for those, it-getting companies is to establish your own company and its individuals as influential, right? So your CEO should be out there having a personal brand on LinkedIn or whatever channel makes the most sense for your business. They need to be writing blog posts or having blog posts written in their name. They need to be posting videos on YouTube and other places for your company, and embracing the fact that they, as individuals within that company, are influencers within the space. About a year ago or so, some of the influencer marketing software companies out there that help you kind of find influencers and filter them, they started to redefine the types of people, the types of influencers that are out there. Instead of just social media influencers, which is what we generally think of, they separated them out and said, okay, there's social media influencers, and then there's content creators who really are all about the talent and the content they create. And there's some overlap there, certainly. But then there's also people who are influential because of where they work. Brand influencers, right? There's a young lady by the name of Ronnie Monty who is in HR and internal relations and whatnot at Adobe, but she ran their influencer marketing stuff for a long time. Most people out there who know who Ronnie Monty is know her because she was at Adobe. Now, she's brilliant, so it didn't matter which company she was going to be at. She would have been known within the industry, but she's, probably a lot more influential in a lot of places because Adobe follows her name, right? And so being able to establish your internal people as influencers within the company's overall vertical, but then within their individual verticals, like you chief HR officers out there, you need to be an influencer in the HR space, because if you are, the people who are applying for jobs within your company are going, whoa, this person's like known right? And so they embrace that culture. They're going to allow me to grow into a role where I can also bring my audience and my personal brand to the table. So those are probably the two biggest things. And then I would also say the third one probably is really being able to understand how effective a candidate is in managing their social channels and being influential within their own space. I wouldn't ever say you should only hire people who have X amount of followers online, because that's very, very misleading. But what I would say is understand if you're looking for someone to fill, let's say, a marketing assistance role within your organization. Do they blog about marketing? Do they post videos on their social channels about marketing? Are they trying to establish themselves as a thought leader in the marketing space? I don't think that should be a requirement for them to get the job or be considered for the job, but the candidates that are going to separate themselves from the pack are the ones who are trying to build thought leadership and establish themselves as authoritative in that field, as well as trying to establish themselves as a good connection with you in an interview.
I like where you went there. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the organic nature of influence marketing too, right? Because so often a CEO might read a book or hear about a podcast where this idea comes to them and they say, we need that, right? I want some of that. Mm-hmm. How do you construct an environment as a leader that allows for individuals to have a voice?
Well, there's a couple of different ways. I think obviously if from the top down, the leadership embraces the individuals within the organization having a voice, that's a huge impact on culture. But the way that might manifest itself is you're very open and transparent about the company's, roadmap, the plans of where you're going, what you're doing, what products you're making, what services what your plans are. You trust the employees to know what's able to share and what's not able to share. There's certain things that we got to keep close to the vest because we don't want to, show our hand to the competitors in the world out there. So this stuff is internal, but here's the things you can talk about and trust them to talk about things responsibly. But I think you can also say, hey, we're going to have everybody within your department is going to be given an opportunity frequently to post to the company blog or create content for the company LinkedIn page or social channels. Or we're going to do some live streams and we're going to come and interview you as a part of the company live stream, talking about what your department does or what your project is or what your passions are. So having the company proactively put the employees in front of the camera and in front of the microphone as opposed to behind it, and let them have a voice through the company's channels, now encourages them to say, hey, well, maybe I can also share my expertise on this one little thing, on my own private channel or my own personal channels, and make them public and not be afraid of doing that because my company embraces that. Once you start to embrace that culture from the top down, you'll start to see those that want to will take the lead, they'll take the nod, and they will start to create content in their own channels that help your company. Those that don't want to won't, and that's okay. They don't have to. I don't think it should ever be a job requirement for somebody to do that. But if they bring that to the table as well, it makes them a much more holistically powerful employee in hiring for the company.
How do we value it, Jason? So when we think about the power of influence marketing and utilizing your employees as a megaphone, so to speak, for your brand, how do you put numbers on that, right? Like, how do I know they do their job well, right? They do it equally as well as the person that's quiet,
right?
How do I measure that? Like, what do I do with the impact of it?
Sure. So I would measure an internal influencer, if you will, the same way I would measure an external influencer. Have them authenticate through whatever measurement software you're using for influencers and make sure that their social channels and their posts that tag you are being measured by the company. We know the reach, we know the frequency, we know the engagement rates, we know how many people they're reaching. We can do content analysis and understand, are they using the talking points we want them to use? How often are they, posting about us, et cetera? And you can start to quantify those things that say, look, our external influencers are influencers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And, in order they have a reach of this, a frequency of that, and an engagement rate of this. Well, here are our top 5 internal influencers, and here's how their numbers compare. What you'll probably see in general, depending upon the types of influencers you engage externally, is the externals are going to have a lot bigger numbers in terms of reach and maybe even of frequency. But the engagement rates of your internals are probably going to be more impressive because they're not necessarily someone with 500,000 followers on Instagram. They're someone who's got 550 followers on Facebook, but the conversations are much more genuine. They're more with people they actually know as opposed to fans and followers. And now all of a sudden you realize, hey, if you do the math, you can say this person's got 500,000 followers, but an engagement rate of 0.0025%. This person's got 1,000 followers, but they've got a 6% engagement rate. Now, all of a sudden, that internal influencer looks a lot more attractive because you're going to reach more people with that message.
So you mentioned the word genuine just a moment ago. And with influence marketing, I believe that trust and authenticity play a significant role. Can you maybe speak to the value and the meaning of those two words with relation to influence marketing?
Sure, I can. And I'm glad you brought that up. Authenticity is starting to get, it's like synergy. It's one of those words people start to roll their eyes at these days. But it's still very, very meaningful. And so authenticity and genuineness in content, it's very simple. When you see an actor come on a commercial on a television and hold up a product and say, I like these Q-tips. They are the best Q-tips in the whole wide world. You should buy these Q-tips. Ding, off the teeth, right? You know that there's nothing genuine or authentic about that. They're reading a script. They've been paid to do that. It's just an ad, right? Well, an influencer in the online influencer space, or even an internal influencer that you have within your organization, if they constantly go to their audience with, let me take time out from what I really talk about here to promote this product or service, there's a level of revealing of the audience being able to see through that, to see the reveal that, they're just doing this because they're getting paid or they're getting forced to or they're getting asked to, and there's not a real genuine thing here. They can suss that out pretty quickly. If, however, the influencer is really, empowered by you and really engaged in your product, and you've been really, thoughtful in picking the influencers who are already brand fans. Now, all of a sudden, when they turn and say, you know what, this is the software I use for this thing, and I use it every day, and let me show you how I use it. Now, all of a sudden, the audience is like, this isn't an ad. This is them making a real recommendation to me. And so the fans and followers of these influencers or of your brand out there see through that BS pretty quickly. And so that's why from an influencer marketing standpoint, talking about online influencers, I've always tried to recommend to clients, look, I don't want to pick 10 who have a big following and do a sponsored post with those 10 people. I want to pick 3 and I want to engage them for a year. And I want to do constant stuff with them and bring them into the product development process and let them meet the CEO and have constant conversations with people within the organization, because I want them to be passionate about us. And if they're passionate about us, it doesn't matter what we ask them to share with their audience. They're going to share it in a very genuine way that the audience is going to understand. They're going to be much more trustworthy, much more believable. And if they are, that influence marketing investment is going to be much more effective.
What's my roadmap, Jason? How do I get to an influence marketing platform? Like, what am I trying to do? I say, look, I know how much this means to my organization. I know that we want to do it, but I don't really know how to do it, right? Like, what are the first steps? How do I benchmark myself?
Well, the first thing you have to do is define your goal. What are you using it for? If you're using it for a platform that we're going to recruit with, that's one thing. If you're using it for a platform that, you're going to market and promote your product, you're going to try to drive sales, you're going to try to build awareness, you're going to try to change the way people think about something. Deciding your goals is always the first step, because that informs all the other decisions. And if you do that on the front end, then when you get to the end of measuring how you did, it's much easier because you had a goal. We're going to try to get to here. Well, did you get there or not? And if you do a really good job of planning to measure from the very first, from deciding your goals, then you set those data traps along the way to kind of come full circle back to the goal and say, we did or did not achieve this, or we got this much closer to that goal in this period of time, and we knew what we were trying to do. So deciding your goal is really the first thing. And then you've got to really look at your audience and understand, okay, who are we trying to reach? And then who are the influential people out there that also reach that audience? Because if you're using an influencer that doesn't reach that audience, you're wasting your time, right? You want to be able to get to the people you want to get to, but you've got to find that third party to reach them. And that goes back to the same strategic mentality we've always had with advertising, right? If I'm someone who sells outdoor gear, I'm not really going to do much advertising on the Sci-Fi Channel, right? I'm going to go to the Discovery Network or National Geographic or the Outdoor Channel, right? And so it's the same kind of thing. I want to pick influencers that align with my brand, with my content, with my purpose, with my goals, for the world, because those are the ones where the audience is going to align with me a lot better. Once you've figured out who you want to reach and what your ultimate goals are, then it's a matter of engaging them, developing assets that they can use with their audience, and maybe them developing assets that you can then in turn use with your audience, and making sure that those messages that you deliver back and forth, either to them or to their audiences, or that they deliver back to you, are in line with what you're trying to do with your goals. And so once you do all that and you get to the end of the quarter or the year or the campaign or a benchmarking point, then you can look back and say, okay, here was our goal. Here are all the data traps we set to figure out if we were marching toward that goal. Let's look at them and see, are we going up and to the right, or are there some hiccups in there that we need to iron out?
I like it. So it's not often that I have, it's not true. I try to bring as many marketing people on as I can to connect with the HR community, the leadership community, because look, if you're trying to hire people, you could be in operations, right? You can be in HR, you can be in talent acquisition, you can be a CEO. There's a lot of different types of people that are listening to the show. Oftentimes, we look at marketing and their relationship with sales, and that is sometimes a great relationship, and other times not so great. Right. More often than not, when we think about HR and marketing, that relationship is non-existent. And there's usually a great amount of education that I'm trying to do with our clients to help them understand how to build an internal relationship with marketing, because it hasn't existed in the past. And if you're in marketing, you likely have some BHAGs and some really strong goals related to revenue, because more often than not, in most organizations, marketing is tied to that function of the business, that side of the organization. How does HR at either a senior strategic leadership level or even a middle management level start to establish a relationship with marketing where they can begin to work together to achieve organizational goals? Thinking about it from the marketing perspective, like, what do you need from HR to think, right, hey, I get what they're putting down. I want to work with them to help them.
I think the biggest thing from a marketing perspective that would impress me or help me really make a connection with an HR director is if they spoke my language a little bit, if they understood that marketing was a part of their job, even if it's just candidate marketing or position marketing. If they came to me and said, hey, I'm thinking about doing some influencer stuff to make sure that we get some better candidates for this next round of job applicants. I've identified 3 or 4 people who are influential in the HR space. Can you help me identify some influential people in the IT world who it makes sense for them to talk to their audience about open positions in our company? If an HR person came to me with that kind of request, I'd be like, wow, they got their stuff together. They know what they're talking about. Yeah, I can help you find some IT people. Now, all of a sudden, you're speaking much more of the same language. But I think it works the other way too. I think when the marketing people want to depend on HR to hire good candidates or whatnot, they've got to stop thinking, okay, HR doesn't know marketing, so I'm going to go post this on Ad Age and all these other places, and I'm just going to ignore them. I think you've got to have that partnership, that collaborative spirit, and go to HR and say, okay, we're looking for, these types of candidates, and I've got some ideas on some places, some job boards, and maybe even some influencers within our space that make sense. But what do you know about your space? Is Indeed right, or ZipRecruiter, or these other resources that are out there? Should we be there? And let's work together to optimize what we deliver to that particular posting for that environment, because what Indeed might want in order for the job posting to be optimal and have all the accoutrements around it to be prioritized in their search function might be different than what LinkedIn is going to prioritize. So let's talk to HR with HR language in mind and have HR talk to marketing with marketing language in mind. All of a sudden, you're going to start to see a little bit more of a relationship there.
Thank you for that, Jason. We're getting to the end here, and I really appreciate you coming on today. Can you tell the listeners what Winfluence is and why it might be of interest to them?
Sure. So Winfluence, Reframing Influencer Marketing to Ignite Your Brand is the name of the book. That's what it looks like. And you can get it at jasonfalls.com. I'm easy to find. But basically what the book is it's kind of what we've been talking about here. It's let's rethink influencer marketing, widen, the blinders a little bit there, pull those back so that we can see that we're trying to accomplish a goal here. It's a verb. We're trying to influence people to take action, to think differently, to do something, to try and buy our product, to consider our product, and stop thinking it in terms of, here's this Instagrammer that I want to hold my product while they, do a cheesy selfie or in Bali or wherever they are. If you think about influence marketing in that broad context, and the book is really a strategic guide on how to do that. There's a chapter in there that's here's the step-by-step stuff. So there's how to do it is in there, but it's really more about how to think about it. And there's lots of really good case studies and examples in there for marketers, for B2B marketers, for B2C marketers, probably some good inspiration and ideas in there for the HR people as well, to sort of understand how to leverage those people who have influence over an audience that you might want to reach so that you can be successful.
Thank you, Jason. How can people find you online?
JasonFalls.com and Jason Falls on all the social networks. There's a gentleman in North Carolina who's a politician with the same name who does not like me at all because I kind of own it. And so I'm easy to find. And that's what being good on the digital space is all about.
I mean, in fairness, at least people can find him too this way. I mean,
yeah, he often goes by Falls Jason. Like I know his Twitter handle is Falls Jason, and I'm mad at him because he won't send me a yard sign. He runs for office, and I'm like, hey, send me a Jason Falls yard sign. He's like, nope. I'm like, come on, man. Whatever.
Definitely go follow Jason on LinkedIn and Twitter. Those are at least the two primary locations that I keep up with Jason. If you're interested in learning more about Winfluence, I'll tell you that I came across Jason on Douglas Burdett's Marketing Book podcast, so a shameless plug for him. So if you're wanting a quick synopsis, the Cliff Notes version, that's a great place to start, but definitely go pick up a copy of the book. And that is a wrap on another episode of the Talent Tide podcast. Thank you for joining us. Be sure to follow us on YouTube, as well as like and rate on Apple Podcasts, and check us out on Spotify and any of the other locations as well. We'll be back soon, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Looking forward to all of my listeners enjoying this episode with Jason, and remember that success is on the other side of fear. Thank you.